Have you ever had OBS Studio lag horribly or even crash right in the middle of a stream or recording, and it just leaves you incredibly frustrated? We all have, don't worry. At least once a week, I always have somebody coming to me and asking me to help them fix the issue that they're having with OBS Studio. Most of the issues are easy to figure out when you know what you're looking for. So I'm going to teach you my secrets to diagnosing and fixing the 5 most common problems I wind up encountering with OBS Studio. Now, OBS Studio is arguably the best software when it comes to streaming and recording. It's able to be customized, and it's able to be tailored specific to the needs that you have through scripts, plugins, integrations, and so many other things. The possibilities of what OBS Studio can do keeps expanding. Unfortunately, that means that there's more room for issues. Even though these problems sometimes occur because of software issues, I've found that most of these issues are simple setup errors, and the most common errors I have found are video stuttering, stream lag, corrupted video recordings, video and audio desyncing, and, well, crashing. Each one of these problems has a method to diagnose and solve easily. So first, let me talk about some general settings that usually fix a lot of initial issues that people come to me about. First, you need to make sure that you're running OBS Studio as an administrator. Simply right-click on the icon and select Run as Administrator on the desktop icon, and that will solve that problem. Now, if you don't have a desktop icon and you do it through the Windows menu, you'll still right-click on the icon, but you're going to go to More and select Run as Administrator. This resolves a lot of issues quickly, as OBS Studio does need the ability to change its priority on your PC based on, well, the next tip I'm about to give you. In OBS Studio, go to your settings and then down to Advanced Settings. In here, you want to make your process priority above normal or high, kind of depending on your preference here. What this is going to do is allow OBS Studio to be prioritized higher than the other programs for accessing your computer's resources, such as your CPU and your GPU. This will help smooth out performance overall, but it doesn't always solve everything, but this can help alleviate a lot of the problems that you might be facing. Another thing you might want to look at while we're talking about this is you want to look at the programs that are running in the background and starting up immediately when your PC starts up. When you're running OBS Studio, you really are having OBS Studio compete with every other program on your PC for the same kind of resources. So if you are disabling some of these programs from starting up when your PC starts up, this at least will open up some avenues for OBS Studio to have a little bit more to work with. Now, to disable programs from starting up when you start your PC, simply open your Task Manager, hit Ctrl-Alt-Delete, and select Task Manager, and then you're going to go to the Startup tab. Look through this list of programs for the ones that you don't need to have starting up with your PC. This way you can minimize some of the typical workload your PC is doing to free up those resources. Plus, this will help boost your PC's boot time, so that's always good. All right, while we actually get into the problems that I wind up diagnosing. Video stuttering is one of the most common issues I'm generally asked about, and probably the easiest for me to figure out. So let's go over this. So first, have OBS Studio open and make sure you have the stats doc open so you can see where the lag potentially could be coming from. You'll also want to have your Windows Task Manager open so that way you can monitor your CPU, your RAM, and your GPU, or your graphics card, if you will. These 2 things will help you troubleshoot. So to make sure we are diagnosing everything correctly with the Task Manager and the stats doc, you need to also make sure that any programs you use while you're streaming or while you're recording, those programs are also open and running. This is going to give you a clearer picture of what needs to be adjusted so you can run everything smoothly. Now, once you have all this up, you're going to want to do a recording, maybe 30 seconds or maybe even a minute, just enough that you can see on the stats doc where those frames are being missed. So once you have the information of where these frames are being dropped, let's help you figure out what it all means. So for frames missed due to rendering lag, generally what you're going to want to examine is all those active sources that you have open with your OBS. So this is the one that has all the eyeballs that are open in your source list. And you're going to need to determine which of these isn't needed throughout your entire stream or recording, and you want to hide those until you would actually need them. A simple way to manage all this would be to set up hotkeys in OBS Studio and assign sources different hotkeys. Now, if you have a bot like StreamerBot or Mix It Up or something that actually will integrate with OBS Studio and be able to trigger these things, that's going to help you to be able to manage that and keep the decoding of all those sources down to a minimum. And that should help really alleviate a lot of the render lag that you would be experiencing. Additionally, find ways to maybe combine some of those sources into one source so there's less for it to do. Now, if you see problems with frame skip due to encoding lag, this is going to point to a variety of different things, and it takes a little bit more analysis to figure out. Generally, this is going to point to streaming or recording settings that you have set up, or potentially you're just tasking your PC a little too hard. So when you're recording a small test video, look at the task manager. Note what is the high usage. Is it the CPU that's high? Is it the GPU is high? One of those two, because you're going to compare that information with your settings in OBS under output settings. First, you need to know what the difference is with the video encoders. If you're using X264, you're essentially relying on your CPU to handle all the video encoding processes that compiles everything into one video file. And it's either saved on your PC or it's being streamed out to the internet, whichever way that you're having that work. Now, if you're using an NVENC encoder, that means you're using an NVIDIA GPU's dedicated processors to handle the encoding process. If you have a Radeon card by AMD, you won't see NVENC. Instead, you'll probably see an AMD AMF encoder implementations, likely H264 or HVEC as the options you can choose from. With AV1 encoders not fully accepted with Twitch and reports of quality degradation on YouTube, I'm gonna put AV1 for a different video at another time. But anyway, what you're looking for is what's getting overloaded. So let's take, for example, if you're using the X264 encoding from your CPU, and this is generally what everybody says is better for streaming. But if your CPU is being overloaded, it doesn't really do you a lot of good. So you know that the CPU is being overworked. So what you would need to do is switch that to one of the GPU encoders. And you can use NVENC, H264, HVEC, and the like. Now, if it's the other way around and you're using NVENC as the encoder and that's getting overloaded, but your CPU has the room, you want to move it to X264. This at least helps you balance out some of those encoding issues you might be having. Now, if that's not going to solve the option and it's not really mattering between which encoder setting you're using, the next option you have is to adjust the different settings to better smooth out the processing. Now, this is a method that you can also use when it comes to network lag. Maybe you don't have enough upload speed that you're trying to send too much information to too slow of a connection. And we'll also get into more of that as we go. But first, let me show you how bitrate, resolution, and frame rate should typically look when you're approaching encoding lag or network lag or something of this nature. Bitrate is the amount of data you are sending every second in kilobits. So if you have a bitrate set at 6,000 kilobits per second, you are attempting to encode 6 megabytes of information and send that 6 megabytes through the internet upload every single second. This is not going to be easily done, if at all, for many who don't have the upload speeds of maybe 10 megabytes or higher. Because it's not just the video that you're having to think about being uploaded. You have to think about everything else in your house being connected to the internet and drawing things, like multiplayer games, Netflix, multiple PCs, phones. All these things are going to be drawing on the internet, so you need to make sure you have more room than you're actually outputting via your OBS. Also, the lower end your hardware on your PC is, the less likely your PC can achieve something like 6 megabytes of encoding every second. Most laptops struggle to achieve this amount of encoding in general. Now, if you have a gaming laptop, it's a different story, but if you're trying to do a laptop, it's a gaming laptop, and you're trying to stream and game from it at the same time, yeah, you're going to encounter some errors. So you have to determine what combination of things that you're going to need to use when it comes to your bitrate and your output resolution and your frame rate. So what you're going to be aiming for is what is going to be the most consistently smooth result. So if you have an FPS game and you're currently at a full 1080p stream, 1920 by 1080, and it's at 60 frames per second, well, if you're doing something that has that fast-paced action and everything, you're gonna want to keep a smooth frame rate, but maybe you're gonna have to downscale the resolution to 1280 by 720. And this way, you only have to do about 2800 kilobits of encoding, which will be easier on your PC and easier to upload. And it's going to smooth out so much of those issues. Or maybe let's just say you're doing something that doesn't have a lot of quick motions and things like that. And something like The Sims. This you could do a 1920 by 1080, but do it at 30 frames per second. And this way you only have to do maybe something like 3200 kilobits per second. These adjustments require testing out what is going to work best for your content, your viewers, and your PC. And also remember, if you stream to Twitch, only partners have different frame rates for their viewers. And whatever you're broadcasting, if you are not a partner, may not be accessible to everyone, because maybe a stream at 1080p 60 frames per second is too demanding for your potential audience to be able to view you. Just something to think about. So let's go over how we're going to make these adjustments. For this, you would go to the video tab on your settings and change the output scaled resolution to a lower setting. So typically you'd aim for the same aspect ratio, which is 16 by 9, and you want to maintain those same proportions. So you would be going from maybe 1920 by 1080 to 1280 by 720, or you would go to standard definition, which would be 960 by 540. If you downscale, you have the option of a downscale filter to determine how best to adjust the video. Honestly, if you leave it at bicubic, it's going to give you pretty much what you want, and it's not going to be much of a hassle. It's going to be a pretty clear translation with very little loss. Below that is the option where you can adjust the frame rate. So if you want to keep the common frame rate values and choose either 30 or 60, as those are the standards that most audience are used to seeing, and those are generally accepted. When you've made your changes, make sure you hit apply before moving on, because you will not save that unless you hit apply. All right. Now, based on what you've determined to rescale it to and the frame rate, you will return to the output tab and adjust your bitrate to best accommodate the resolution and frame rate you have chosen. So, based on the information that is provided here. One thing some forget to factor into the output bitrate is the audio bitrate. And trust me, this gets overlooked a lot. On the output tab, you'll want to go and click on the audio tab next to the recording. Here, you can set the bit rates for each track. These are measured in kilobits, but add up quick with 6 different tracks. So let me demonstrate this. If you were to have all 6 set to 320 kilobits per second, you would need to factor in 1,920 kilobits into your overall bitrate. So if you had set your bitrate to 6,000 on the video tab and you set the 320 per track on your audio, you're actually going to be outputting 7,920 kilobits per second. Not the 6,000 that you think. So you need to make sure that you are factoring your audio bitrate with the video bitrate. Just remember, if you're a Twitch streamer, the max accepted bitrate is 6,000 kilobits, and that's including your video and your audio. So make sure that there's not extra bitrate being sent to Twitch. Otherwise, that could potentially cause problems because you do get limited. This extra bitrate not being factored has been the source of some issues I've helped others discover, and sometimes just a simple lowering of the bitrate to accommodate that audio fixes everything. Now, with all these adjustments, you should be able to smooth out your stream or your recording and eliminate that video stutter that you experience. Don't get hung up on resolution and frame rate when the goal is overall quality of content. That's what's going to keep your audience. Now, while we've covered how to adjust bitrate, resolution, and frame rate to accommodate network lag through the internet, there's still a couple pointers I want to give when it comes to lag through the network. You may think you know the speed of your internet based on whatever your provider has told you, but have you actually done a speed test to see what you're really getting? If you're getting less than what you're paying for, one thing you can always do is reach out to your ISP and see if there's anything that can be done to bring your upload speed to what you're paying for. There's never any harm in asking this, and sometimes they may tell you there might not be a lot they can do because maybe they just have that many people using the internet at that same time. But running a speed test is going to help you understand why you might be having some issues with network lag, as maybe there's not enough upload bandwidth that can be used for your stream. and how you have it set up. I typically take whatever I get from my speed test and I divide it by 2. I usually try to accommodate half of the overall upload I have for my stream. So if I'm only getting 10 megabytes upload, that means my total stream output should only be 5,000 kilobits at max. So if you only have 8 megabytes of upload, you might want to shift to downscaling to a 720p 60 frames a second with 2800 kilobits per second, or a 1080p 30 frames a second at 3200 kilobits a second to allow enough room to maintain a smooth stream with your upload speed. Oh, nothing could feel more defeating than recording for 30 minutes and then something corrupts the video you were working on and there's not much you can do. This is going to be caused by an OBS crash or just some random glitch that just happens during the finalization of encoding. If you're trying to record with MP4, you will notice that there's a warning that if the file corrupts, there's no recovering the recording. So let me recommend something to help with this. First, you're going to set the recording format to .mkv, which will preserve your recording in the event of a crash or a glitch. Now, before you say, my editing software doesn't allow for MKV, head to the Advanced tab. Here, there is a section called Recording, and you will see an option for automatically remux to MP4. You want to check this option so you will have your MP4 recording, but if it should fail, you still have the MKV backup. This is going to make 2 different files, which will double the amount of hard drive space you are using for recording. So you'll need to keep that in mind when doing this. But this is going to provide you that little bit of just protection in case the MP4 file should fail to encode properly. You only have the MKV file that works and your MP4 is corrupted and just cannot be recovered. The multi-streaming platform Restream.io has an MKV to MP4 converter that you can use for free. And yes, it supports the conversion of multiple video file types like MOV, FLAC, and so many others. Now, while this doesn't solve all your issues with file corruption, this at least provides a fail-safe in case you should have something like this happen, that you're not going to lose all the video that you have spent the time working on. All right, it can be frustrating to have your video look great and think that everything's going to be awesome, and then you go back and realize your audio is noticeably not happening at the same time as it's supposed to be. Fortunately, there is a fix, and it's pretty straightforward for doing this. However, it's winds up being a little time consuming. Each source in OBS Studio that has an audio track active will display in the audio mixer. If you click on the 3 dots, you will want to select the advanced audio properties. On this window, you will see a column that's named Sync Offset. This is where you can adjust the individual offsets of each source. Now, while this will take some trial and error to adjust the timing of the source or sources that are problematic, the ability to fix this is actually easy. Now, it's also important to note that if you have never separated your audio tracks to make video editing easier, now's a good time to do it if you're in here, because if you look to the far right, you will see that there are listed tracks that you can checkmark for each source. And this can make video editing far easier. You can then put your mic onto track 1, your gameplay to track 2, music to track 3, and so on. You can make sure that you are able to separate these audio tracks in a way that it's going to make your video editing so much easier. So really, that's just a pro tip I'm throwing out at you because it's something I still need to fix myself. All right, let's talk about it, because it's gonna happen. Every crash is frustrating and likely making you yell at your screen. Now, while understanding these crashes can be difficult, there are some things you can do to understand what happened. If you click on the Help on the top toolbar and go to Crash Reports, you'll be able to see that you can upload a crash report and it'll provide a link. Then you can go into the OBS Discord, forums, or even Reddit with that link, and you can actually then ask people about your crash, and there are plenty of OBS users who have the knowledge to be able to analyze it and help you understand why your OBS crashed. Now, if you want to look at it yourself, you can click Show Crash Reports and it'll bring up all the saved text files. I'm going to show you this particular crash that happened to me, and I know exactly what happened. But if you look, it's going to say that thread 81EC crashed, and there's a lot of numbers and information there. Well, if I go over to the address and I look at it, what I will tell you, it's the SL browser plugin, those three. I know that's the problem because that was when I tried to install Streamlabs' plugin that they had released, and all it was doing was crashing my OBS constantly. So that immediately tells me that if I remove that plugin, because everything was fine until that plugin was installed, if I remove all that, everything will work right. And for the most part, it did. But if you're able to see something in these crash log reports that stands out to you and you can go, that doesn't look right, then you at least have that going for you. And if you don't understand any of it, that's okay. Again, go to the OBS forums or the OBS Reddit, or even into the OBS Discord, and there will always be somebody who will be willing to help you figure out what's going on. Another thing you can look to is the log file. If you go to help and you go to log files and then click upload current log file, it'll provide you a window with a link. But you can click analyze and it'll bring up your browser and it'll take you straight to OBS's analyzer for your OBS. And it's going to provide you information on critical problems, warnings of potential issues, and general information about what your OBS has installed and is operating. The analysis can point to potential causes of OBS crashes and provide you with information that you can use to adjust your OBS accordingly to improve its overall stability. So if you see something where it's giving you a warning, you can then make the adjustment. So these are just the basic things that I go over, and this is how I approach problem solving for so many people with OBS Studio. Now, there are definitely going to be some more advanced issues that pop up and very specific issues that happen. And if you ever want to reach out to me to maybe talk to me about what maybe the issue you're having and need my help, you can always reach out to me with my Discord or leave a comment down here and I'll explain it the best I can. This at least gives you a start on being able to then look at your OBS when something like this happens and you can make the adjustments yourself. All right, hopefully I've given you some information that helps you out here. So with that, I'm done with this video and I'm gonna go play Destiny right now because the final shape calls.